Hello and welcome to the video. This is a quick look at the latest wing that I'm playing with here. Now this is another one that passed me by. Now recently you might have been watching some of the videos that included the Atom RC Dolphin. That was a model that I hadn't spotted, and one of you, the viewers, told me that it was a good model to try. So I got it in. You're absolutely right, still loving it. In fact, in a crash just recently, I stripped one of the plastic gears in the supplied servos, which aren't great. So I have put some nice EMAX digital metal geared servos in that model. And they're actually the same servos that I put into this. The reason that I've got this in is that I'm looking for a nice 700-ish millimeter wing to replace my beloved ZOHD Dart, which is getting very old now. And crazily, ZOHD seems to have stopped making that model without bringing out a replacement for it. And I don't count the 250 gram Dart as a replacement. But this is a DIATONE Ripper R690. And the reason that I got this, I need to give a very big shout out to one of my flying buddies, Adam. He actually got this before me, and on a flying day pulled it out and flew it, and I thought, actually, that's really nice. And then the next couple of flying days we had, every time I saw it, I thought, you know, I actually quite fancy that. Now there is a lot of room inside of here. I'm flying it on a 1300 4S battery. I have a flight controller with iNav in, surprise, surprise, and I'm trying to make it all work with the DJI system. However, it's kind of hidden away there, surrounded with lots and lots of metal. So let me just show you how it comes in the box. The box is beautiful for this, the way it's packed. Go through some of the specs and where I'm up to. Unfortunately, there's no flight footage yet in this, as I am still working on getting it stable and getting a good maiden out of it, which is why you might notice there's a couple of bits of damage. There's, for example, there's reinforcing tape. This is Blenderm tape, which is my personal favourite. I actually managed to rip an aileron off and damage that, and also you might spot there's a little bit of hot glue that's kind of holding that piece back together. It took quite a nasty couple of crashes. I think I've got it figured out what the problem is. But I want to cover that when I've absolutely confirmed that's the case and do a maiden video. Hopefully I can get the maiden all done without smashing it completely. But anyway, let me show you how it comes in the box and talk about the specs and give you a quick overview of how I've put the electronics inside and what I went for. So this is how the box comes. The box itself is incredibly small, and when you open it, it's brilliantly packaged. Every individual piece is in its own bit of cardboard with its own bit of protection. Now this again is the DIATONE Ripper R690 wing. It's made of EPP foam, ABS and carbon fibre reinforcements. This first bag, as you can see, has the covers for the servos and all of the pieces that you need, including the control horns and a couple of props. One prop for 3S and one prop for 4S. There's also the supports here for things like the full-size Air Unit from DJI and the Air Unit Mini, as well as your battery strap and everything else. Wingspan of this is 690 millimeters. It's about 88 millimeters deep, and that will be 450 millimeters across. The wings are not designed to be removable. This box, you can see, has the hatch cover kept in place with a couple of magnets. You can see the two recesses if you want to cut those off for the DJI Air Unit. Those are the winglets for the end. Unfortunately, one of those has already been damaged on mine, but that's just how it goes sometimes. Some models fight you. Weight without anything in is about 150 grams. I'll talk about what the weight is when I've got everything in a moment. The main body, I've not got electronics in mine. I've bought separate things. I'll show you what I've put in it in a moment. Nice setup for the camera in the front, couple of air vents. There's kind of skids built into it at the bottom, and then you have this kind of cool tray design that allows you to kind of put your flight controller and everything else where you want. That is the lead that goes to the back for some lights that light up red and green either side of the motor. And you can just see here the top just snaps into place. Take-off weight, he reckons 350, 750 grams. With all the weight I've got in mind, I'm probably towards the heavier end, but hopefully that will help with cutting through the air. Carbon fibre spar for the wings. The wings aren't designed to be removable, sadly, so you are going to have to glue them into place, and once they're there, they're not going anywhere. Let me just exercise these hinges. As I said, after I filmed this, a crash took one of the hinges out and I just blend-ermed it all back together. But nice aerofoil and a little bit of reflex in the back as well. So that should mean I can set up the control surfaces reasonably in line with the rear part of the wing. And then once the servos are in with a dab of hot glue, these covers go over the top to make it super neat. Recommended parts on the website is a 2205 2350 kV motor. Recommends a 35 amp ESC. I've gone for a slightly bigger one. I was struggling to get a 35 amp here. I set mine up here for the DJI stuff, so it's the DJI controller. I'm yet to be convinced that I'm going to get enough cooling out of this. I'm trying my best to keep it as cool as I can. I may end up cutting additional cooling ducts for the front of the model. The build itself wasn't particularly tricky. I just installed the servos with a dab of hot glue, run the cables into the body, hot glued the wings into position, and then pushed home the supplied control horns and also the supplied push rods as well. They're a preset length with a little kind of right angle bend in the middle. Not overly impressed by that, but we'll see how they go. I might end up swapping those out for something a little bit beefier. Cut a recess for the GPS in the wing and sunk that in, and then 3D printed a surround and popped that on top. The flight controller I'm using in this is a Maytech F411 WSE. I used it in my Atom RC Dolphin. It's a great compact little board for things like this, and it should allow me to get it all working reasonably easy. There have been some reports of iNav 3.0 accidentally losing configuration on these boards. I, touch wood, haven't had it yet, but I will make sure that I'm making a copy of all of the settings once it's all got set up. Using a 45 amp ESC, I'm just struggling to get the ESC that I really want, so I'm going to use this one. Taken off the heat shrink and made the cables off just to keep everything neat, and then put all the power cables onto the bottom of the flight controller and popped everything into position. Then I've mounted the DJI FPV stuff at the front. This is the Cadix system, single antenna. Again, there's a nice place for it to go out the top. I have put on two quite large heat sinks, full copper heat sinks on the top and bottom to try and help with cooling. I have a reservation about how cool it's going to be. I'm going to have to fly it very carefully the first time we actually get any length of time in the air and see how we get on. If it isn't happy, I'm just going to cut some additional heat sinks. I have a full-size air unit inside my mini DRAC, and the additional cooling vents meant it coped beautifully without these big heat sinks on. Using a 1300 4S battery here, and everything's fitting in really nicely. I have had to add about 20 grams into the nose, even with those big chunky heat sinks. So if you are flying with a more traditional analog setup, pushing the battery towards the nose would get your central gravity spot on without having to add any weight. So there you have it. That's the DIATONE Ripper R690. Hopefully it's going to fly well. My friend's does, and that's the reason that I've got it. Mine's a very different setup. I think it's probably because the throws using these particular servos are extreme. But stay tuned, and as soon as I've got this thing made and also dialed in, I'll come back and show you all the settings were like and give you my tips and tricks for getting it nice to fly. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that, if you're trying to learn a topic, will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.